Cameron and Tim here, as always, on the Free Roll Podcast. Today we are joined by Michael Ransom. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He also has a black belt in karate. He's got kickboxing experience. He's got MMA experience, plenty of point fighting, traditional karate, competition experience, tons of times on the mat. I mean, he's a really, really well-rounded martial artist with a lot of experience from when he was a kid till now, and he's still going strong.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think, man?
I didn't know that he had all these different fighting backgrounds. I knew that he did jits, but I didn't know anything about his karate background and the type of karate, because he explained the different types of karate,
Mm-hmm.
some that were point-based, which is just the one hit, right? And
It's
then
like touch.
the touch and then the no touch.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that stuff. And we even had Ricky Steele on here. He didn't explain those things. I guess I didn't probe or ask any questions, but that was really interesting. I'm kind of glad that I learned a little bit more about that stuff.
Definitely, and along with all of his combat experience and fights in the cage and on the mats, he also talks about his battle with cancer that we're happy he's a strong survivor of.
Yeah, it was. That's also an interesting story, going from one doctor who just put him on antibiotics, and just listen to the whole story, everybody.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Really cool.
Well, stay tuned. We're super pumped to have Mike, and we had a good time with him.
Yeah, definitely. Stay tuned. Make sure that you subscribe. Give us 5 stars. Share the episode if you like it. And have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks for joining us today on the Free Roll Podcast. Today we are sitting here with Mike Ransom. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt out of SBG. He's also a black belt in Kaishin Kai Karate. Sorry, Mike.
That's okay.
He's got 4 fights in kickboxing. He's got 2 MMA fights, and you did plenty of point fighting back when you were doing karate, right?
Yes.
Lots of experience in competition. Lots of experience on the mats. So take us back to the beginning. How did you first get introduced to martial arts? What got you started on this crazy journey?
Well, when I was really young, my dad would bring home lots of like martial arts movies, ninja movies, anything, related to martial arts. And
Nice. What were you guys watching?
Revenge and like Ninja, I can't remember, like Revenge of the Ninja, things like that.
Nice.
Of course, the Karate Kid, like all of those, the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Karate Kid, and I saw all of those. And then when I was 10, I remember my dad, he brought home the UFC. Like, he brought a VHS tape and brought it home for me to watch. He was like, check out this movie, and like we turned it on. It was pretty brutal. I just remember at 10 years old just watching this, like, this is great.
Did you know like the concept going into it, or was he just like, this is a fighting thing?
No, it was just like we just probably thought, my dad was kind of, when I was born, my dad was 50, so he's already kind of old, So, I really don't think he knew, like, what we were watching. He probably just thought it was just another kung fu tape,
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out to be, like, the most brutal and real thing, that I had ever seen. Like, I was like, this is what real fighting's about,
For sure. So is that what got you started? Like, walking into the gym the first time?
Well, not karate. I mean, I just from watching the, Ninja Turtles and all sorts of karate movies and stuff like that, I always wanted to do it. But, like, at the time, like, when you're into traditional martial arts, and then especially, like, in the 90s, like, when Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wasn't big at the time, like, it was still very much... like the martial arts scene was all about stand-up martial arts, and then it was like, why do you need the ground if you can be so great standing up? And so it just like wasn't accepted. And at the time, I don't even think that there were any black belts like out this way in Idaho,
Mm-hmm.
in the 90s. So
Well, the weird thing is like, I was the same as you growing up in karate movies. Van Damme was like my hero,
Yeah.
And in all the movies you saw, that's all you were exposed to was the stand-up. I never even considered the ground fighting, like it never crossed my mind as like a thing, because
Right.
that wasn't in the movies. What's
Right.
in the movies was all the punching and kicking and all that
Right.
stuff.
So after like the first couple UFCs, I was still rooting for like the strikers. I was like, this guy Hoist Gracie's really good, but I would kind of root for the strikers because that's what I was into. Like I thought like the punching and kicking was cool. I just really didn't understand the value of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
So what ended up getting you turned on to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I mean, you're a black belt now. What
Yes.
made you jump in?
So, I started working a job, a security job at Treasure Valley Community College, and I thought like if I hit somebody or kick somebody, I'm probably gonna get sued by one of these young punks, And so I sought out a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school because I knew like, there you could take people down and just hold people down and, not really hurt them. So I wanted to be able to defend myself and not really hurt anybody, at the same time. So
Nice. I mean, it does have that moniker of the gentle art where you can subdue somebody without all that blunt force trauma.
right.
So what's the first jiu-jitsu gym you walked into?
So first I went to Keith Owens' gym. It was called Super Kicks at the time. So he was a brown belt at that time, so he was really a hungry teacher. He was teaching some really good jiu-jitsu, and it was my first real exposure to like real good grappling. So
And where was that located?
in Meridian, Idaho.
In Meridian. Okay, and he's a Pedro Sauer black belt now,
Yeah,
right?
he's a Pedro Sauer black belt.
So pretty
yeah.
legit lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yep, Pedro Sauer, then Hickson Gracie. So.
That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So you walked in there, got started. How'd you feel making the switch from the stand-up to the ground fighting?
It wasn't a shock at all because I'd seen the UFC and knew what it was about. At first, I thought that there was going to be like a problem with the space, like people just invading your space and maybe feeling claustrophobic. But I actually never ever felt that way, and most of the guys that I trained with were big. They were really tall. Some of them were over 200 pounds, and I never felt that way. Like I never felt like I couldn't handle it, like someone being on top of me and squishing me down and trying not to let me escape. I felt fine,
Sure.
There was one point though when I was a purple belt where out of nowhere, like I'd start to get claustrophobic, like for no reason. Yep, like I would get in side control or people would, put me in cross-side and I just, I couldn't get out, and I just had this like crazy like anxiety of just
Jeez.
being on the bottom. It never happened again. It was just like 1 month, while training. It just didn't feel good.
Never before, never after.
Never before, never after. It was
That's
kind
so
of weird.
bizarre.
Yeah, it was very
Wonder
bizarre.
what led
but
to
like
that.
at the first, but first starting out, it was fine.
Sure. So how in the world in Meridian, Idaho, back in the day, jiu-jitsu was, it was nowhere. There was no black belts. There was no brown belts. There was no nothing that
Right.
people could expose to. Everybody, I think, saw Hoist Gracie and were like, oh, man,
Mhm.
I want to get in on this. But
Right,
being able to do so is not nearly as accessible as it is now.
right.
How in the heck did it come to Meridian, Idaho?
Well, I think so. I'm not like 100% on this, but Scott Marker, I believe, was responsible for inviting Pedro Sauer to come out this way, because I remember as a kid, so Scott Marker was a respected like Kempo. He is a respected Kempo black belt, and when I was training in karate, when I was 10 years old, like back in the 90s, people, he understood grappling, and I don't know how he got into grappling, but he very much supported, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And he would wear like these Gracie Jiu-Jitsu shirts to like these karate tournaments, and he would walk by these other black belts and they'd just shake their head and be like, that Gracie shit, it's all bullshit. Just a good knee to the face would end all that right there. And then so I just remember that, back in the day, seeing him, and then I really didn't know who he was until I started getting involved in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like, he did Kempo and I did, like a Japanese style karate. So I really didn't know Scott Marker at the time. I just remember seeing that. But oh man, lost my train of thought. So, but later on, I guess what had happened is he had invited Pedro Sauer out this way, and Pedro Sauer ended up in Utah and having a school in Utah. And so I know that Keith Owen was a student of Pedro Sauer. So I guess, he was driving back and forth, and he would tell me those kind of stories that, he had to drive all the way from Twin Falls all the way up to Utah just to train,
That's right. I think he did have a school in Twin Falls even before he was in the Boise area, if I remember correctly. That's cool. I mean, talk about we're kind of a remote place to have access to that. Before it was really caught on like wildfire like it has now. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Before that, you were doing karate. How old were you when you started karate?
I started when I was 10 years old.
And when did you get your black belt?
I believe I got my black belt in karate in maybe 2016. Not 2016. Sorry. I can't remember. Like started in 1994. I think around 2000. Maybe 2000. I got my black belt in 2000.
What's the belt structure like in the karate you came from? Because everybody's got like a different setup. Jiu-jitsu's got a specific one. Kempo's got a different one.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like in your karate?
It was white belt, green belt, I think purple belt, brown, and then black.
Interesting.
Yes.
So you made it all the way through those in about 6 years. How often were you competing?
Almost every month. There was, back in the day, karate was pretty big, so there were, events almost every month everywhere around the valley. So I would be competing here, sometimes in La Grande, Oregon. I competed a few times in Japan, so I had a lot of fun. It was fun.
So you competed in karate when you were younger. You've competed in kickboxing. You've competed in MMA. We've even tried to get you on some boxing cards here locally. Yeah. How was competing in like the point style karate different from everything else that you've done?
Well, it wasn't real. I mean, it was more of a game of tag than anything else.
How so?
So like, if you were to hit somebody like full force, they would call contact. Like all these judges would come together and they would see like whether, it was a foul or not because you hit them too hard. But that's the game.
They would call contact?
They would all get together and they would have like these huddle meetings to see whether like I hit somebody too hard. And that happened to me a few times.
Wow.
Like where there were a couple guys that I put down with like an axe kick. And so in the black belt division though, what was kind of cool because they would allow you to have a little bit more contact, but still, like, if you put someone down, it wasn't, like, a good thing. Like, it was a foul. Like, even though what you're doing, you're trying to hit somebody, you're trying to kick somebody, but yet you can't make contact. So it just wasn't...
That's so strange.
Yeah,
fighting is the ultimate contact sport.
Yeah, exactly.
Yet you get in trouble for making contact.
Exactly.
So what was the goal then? Like, what was the goal?
Just to show like how controlled you could be with your punches and kicks.
Just on like a touch or something.
Yeah, and some of it too, which a little bit that kind of turns me off about it is like this one strike, one kill. Like if you hit someone in this certain spot that you're just gonna, smash them. You're just gonna drop them, and
the touch
like
of death.
now that that kind of stuff. That's kind of what kind of brought me away from it a little bit. Don't get me wrong. I really love karate. I think it's a great sport.
Sure.
It can teach kids discipline and speed and timing, and I mean, karate has been a big part, of some fighters' arsenals, if you look at the way Conor McGregor stands, he bounces back and forth a lot, like,
he also keeps his hands really low, like a karate fighter, which is so
exactly.
counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm. Well,
to modern fighting, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And so it does teach speed and timing, and one thing about it also is that you're doing the same basics over and over and over. So like I would do like the same punch like like thousands and thousands of times. So that's how you get good at something, you know. It's just to take a fundamental and just keep working that same fundamental, you know, all the time. Like, and so like I would be doing like a one kick, like, and we would just do it like thousands and thousands of times, like kick the bag, like over the course of the week, you know, probably kicked, you know, done the same front kick like literally like 1,000 times.
Well,
just
wasn't
crazy.
it Bruce Lee who said something along the lines of, Don't fear the man who does 1,000 things once. Fear the man who does one thing 1,000 times.
Yeah,
Something along the lines of that.
just like that. And then it almost became like a game of feel. Like any time that I would spar, like if I would see someone move this way, then I'd throw my kick that way, and boom, it would land. Like sometimes I would just remember, you know, kicking people, you know, touching people in the face without really looking. It just became like a process of feel. I feel the same with jiu-jitsu. You know, you should practice something just over and over and over, and that's eventually how you're going to get it, you know.
Sure.
With some resistance, you know.
So coming from a traditional karate background, when did you start making the foray into the more Western style of fighting, like boxing or Muay Thai over in the East?
The style of karate that we did, like my sensei was, he was more open to other forms of fighting as well. So you know, he would watch boxing but he was, so the style of karate that we did was still point fighting, but it was more like hard. So like you could hit people, and we would wear you know, like a body shield and a bubble protector over our faces, and you could kind of hit hard. So that was kind of better than, you know, than the Western point fighting that we had here. But and that's in our style in Japan. That's what they would use, that type of equipment and very thin protectors. So it was a little bit more realistic. But then I remember one time he met this Japanese guy at a Japanese restaurant, and he knew like Kyokushinkai karate. And Kyokushinkai karate is a very hard contact style where you can hit to the body and kick to the face and knee. So it's kind of like kickboxing, but without gloves. It's bare knuckle.
Oh, wow.
And then so we would train that way too. So we would shorten up our stance more like a boxer style, and you know, kick and punch. And like I remember being like 13 or 14, coming home with just like bruises on my body, and my feet were all banged up and stuff. Just, you know, just sparring, you know, with no knuckle guards or anything like that. So it was fun.
And mom and dad were on board for this?
Yeah, they were on board with this. My mom was Filipina, so I remember one time, like the first time my mom ever came with me to a tournament, and it was point fighting, and like after one of my first fights, I sat down, and she came up to me and she was like, "It's like, why are you not hitting them hard?" She was just like, "You should."
She's there.
Yeah. All right, I'm back. All right.
Got our
So-
mascot Doberman in here pulling on things.
I remember my mom saying to me, like, why don't you hit them hard? Like, you should go out, like, hit them to hurt them. And then so I, ever since then, I kind of changed, you know, the way I fought a little. You know, I go in there more to, like, not to get points, but to, like, hit them and punch them. Like, I want to hit them hard and
Put 'em
knock
down.
them out, put them down. So I just remember that. Like, my mom was the one telling me to be way more aggressive. Like, my dad really didn't care. He just let me compete. He was never like that coach, like that parental coach, that asshole coach, you know. He just kind of let me be. So he was a great support in that sense. But my mom, she was more of like, she was that person who was like, kill, which was funny. But
When you know, you and I have coached boxing together, I always make the argument that it's way easier to teach somebody who knows no sort of like contact combat
Right.
stuff
Yes,
than it is
very
to
much
take
so.
somebody who knows, like you. I've got a black belt and something else. It's way easier to teach somebody with no habits than it is to have like a bunch of, habits from something else that they're doing. Not necessarily that they're bad, but you're learning to do something different. Did you find any difficulties in transitioning to the different stances, the different punches, any of that stuff, or were you?
No, not me. No, because I would always try to mimic my teachers. So I really didn't have that an issue with that. But some people can really get caught up with stuff that they used to do. Well, I used to do it this way. Well, that's not how I'm teaching you how to do it. Just do what I say. So I really, don't have an issue there. So, sometimes people will make fun of me because they know I do karate, and they see me do these beautiful karate kicks. But when I spar, sometimes I try to throw more of like a Thai kick and stuff, and it makes a difference. Like, you don't want to kick someone hard with the instep of your foot. You're gonna hurt your foot. It's more beneficial to kick with the shin. It hurts them more than it hurts you.
Sure.
So there's probably more weight and force behind it. So
a lot less chance for a bunch of broken bones in your feet.
I mean, some karate kicks are really great, and a lot of them are. You have to be attribute based. You have to be flexible, and you have to be super quick, and have great balance. So if you don't have those, you're not going to be a great kicker.
So when you started making the transition into the ground stuff, into jiu-jitsu,
yes,
having your exposure to the UFC, you obviously knew the benefits of it. But when you really started doing it, how did you feel? Were you just like, man, this is the coolest thing in the world? Were you just like, I know I need this, but I'm not crazy about it? Like,
right.
I guess, when did you fall in love with jiu-jitsu?
I was hooked right away. So as the minute I started taking lessons, I was super jazzed about it. I was pumped that I was going to learn how to defend myself on the ground, and this could be even another avenue of competition for me. And I knew that MMA was kind of getting big, and this was, in order to, this is like when it was becoming more of a sport now. Like the UFC was kind of bigger, and there was, the first season of Ultimate Fighter had happened while I was starting to train.
Which I always say is like the real pivotal point of MMA, because before that, it was still basically like an exhibition sort of spectacle. It was illegal everywhere. There wasn't unified rules. It was kind of, it was really underground.
Right.
As soon as that first season came out, it was phase 2, basically.
Yeah, it was at that point, like, it was more of a sport. It was, so yeah, I was like, this could be another avenue for me to compete. And so, I just kept plugging along, kept learning. I had to commute a little bit. At the time, I believe I was living in Fruitland, Idaho, which is like on the Oregon-Idaho border. So yeah, I would drive like 30, 40 minutes just to go train every Tuesday, Thursday, I think, and Saturday. So.
How long were you training at Keith Owen's place?
I was with Keith since 2006 to about the end of 2006 to about 2010.
So you obviously your white belt, blue belt.
A blue belt when I left Keith.
Blue belt when you left Keith. So where did you go from there?
Went over to, I believe I spent some time with Mitch Coates at Throwdown when he was at Throwdown for a little bit. And then after that, I went to Combat Fitness. So, yep, I started training at Combat Fitness, I think, late 2010.
Is that where you earned your purple belt?
Yeah, well, we were, at the time, we were affiliated with Alliance through Mitch Coates, and that's how I got my purple belt. So, in about 2012.
Excellent. Okay. Then he made the transition to we already part of Alliance at that time, affiliated with. That later changed to being allied with SBG.
Yes.
How's that been?
The best thing in the world. So I love the organization. I love the people. I love the vibe of the tribe. I love everything about SBG.
That's great. So transitioning from Alliance to SBG was more of a gym organizational change. However, you changed from Keith Owen's place to a completely separate gym. people talk about, switching gyms in jiu-jitsu a lot, and I know it was early in your career as a blue belt, but how does one effectively go about changing gyms? Why would somebody want to change gyms, and how should they handle that?
So I got fired from my job. So I was working for Keith Owen, and I got fired for checking out another place. And it was his rules, and it was his gym, and he said not to check out other places. And I guess I was being a jerk, and I went to check out another place. And
so once you're a member, you're in for life.
Yeah.
Don't leave. Don't check out don't even look. Don't even
right.
look at other places.
I don't know. Now being with SBG now, I know that loyalty is a very big thing. And and I'm sure like loyalty it's always a two-way street.
Sure.
And at the time, I didn't feel like there was a two-way street, and that's just the way I thought. I disagreed with Mr. Keith and like on some things, and I went to check out another place, and he said not to, and I got fired. I was teaching some of his classes there, and no hard feelings. He had to do what he had to do, but that's okay. I'm in a much better place right now.
Sure.
Much better place. So
sounds like it was, turned out to be kind of a good thing.
Not to put Keith down at all, but
of course.
I found the fit for me.
Sure.
SBG is right for me.
Well, regardless, I think of if you get fired or if you're just leaving of your own accord or for whatever reason, that sounds like the right reason to look. Because even though there's plenty of gyms that do jiu-jitsu, they might do them differently. They might have different cultures, different expectations, and I think it's important, for people who are doing jiu-jitsu. People pay to do jiu-jitsu. It's a product that you're buying. I think it's important that you get what you pay for, to whatever that means to you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm obviously just a lowly blue belt, but to my view, it's a product that you pay for. You should make the decision to be where you want to be, regardless of those monikers like the loyalty. I mean, loyalty is important, but try to avoid the cultishness, I guess.
Yes,
really.
Very much so. Like one time I took my son to a taekwondo place. I was trying to get my son interested in martial arts, and I was showing him all these things and like things that he could do, and I took him to a taekwondo place, and he was like, yeah, I might want to give this a try, and just something sporty for him to do. I think maybe try to get him somehow interested. And like was talking to the guy, the instructor over there, and one day he told me, hey, when you're over here, you should call me Master so and so. And I looked at him, and I kind of giggled, and I'm like, do you even know what that word means? You're not my master. You don't tell me when I can eat or when I can shit or when I can do anything. In fact, I'm paying you, for these lessons. So technically, if anybody should be called master, it should be me. I tell you, you should teach my kid, some valuable lessons.
He's
so
working
that
for you.
That was the last time. So that was the last time I ever took my son there. So.
Fair enough. So then you just kind of bouncing back, you end up getting your purple belt from Mitch Coates' affiliation with Alliance. So you had already worked with Keith Owen, great black belt. He's put in his time. He's kind of a legend in the sport. Mitch Coates, black belt himself, been around for a while. Then you make the transition to combat fitness and SBG, get your purple belt. That was still with
still with
Mitch,
Alliance.
right? Still with Alliance.
With Mitch when I got my purple belt, yeah.
And after you got your purple belt, how much had you competed in jiu-jitsu at this point?
I competed once as a white belt, and then maybe like 5 or 6 times at blue belt. So I competed at least 7 times. So before, maybe more than that, before I got my purple belt. So.
Then you get your purple belt, and you ended up facing a far different opponent that you ended up battling for a little while. Tell me about that.
So in 2012, I got testicular cancer. Shortly after I got my purple belt, actually. So, yeah, it sucked. I thought I got injured during training. So my testicle swelled up, and a couple weeks went by, and it was pretty painful. And I thought, oh, it'll just go away. And then I see like a primary health doctor, little doc in the box, and all he says, you've got like a bacterial infection, and so I'm gonna give you these antibiotics. And I was like how do I get an infection? Like, I'm not like doing weird stuff. I don't know why I would have a bacterial infection. And so another month goes by, and I'm like, this has got to go away sometime. So I start getting worried, and I go see my family doctor, and he takes one look, and he's like, oh, that looks like cancer, dude. Like, and that's kind of how he said it, is like, that looks like cancer. And I was just like blown away. I was like, dude, you're kidding, right? And he's like, no. He's like, you need to go get that checked out like right away. So I had like an ultrasound right after that appointment, and then like the day after that, I was having my testicle removed. So
that quick, huh?
Yeah, that quick.
Went
and then
saw the right doctor, and it was just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, it was just like, one like crappy moment after another, so so they told me though that it's one of the best kind of cancers to get. And so
is that because of the treatability, or
because it's 98% curable with chemo, with the chemo drugs. And but they say like they're telling you have cancer, and they're saying it's the best kind you can get.
If you're gonna get cancer,
if you're gonna get,
this is the one you want.
Like, it wasn't like a plate of chocolate chip cookies, I was like, it's the C word.
Mm-hmm.
And but I guess it, if it is the one, that's the most curable one. So
you end up getting it removed, but it's not over at that point.
Yeah, it's not over. Then they waited like a month to treat me. They said that it was a fast acting cell, and that I was in stage 2, which means that it was entering into my lymph nodes. So then they had to treat me with some chemotherapy, which I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do. It was the worst thing.
How long were you doing that?
So I had 20 sessions of chemotherapy. So the way it would work is like I would have like 5 days on, and then have the rest of the month off, and then 5 days on. So it was over the span of like 4 months.
Wow.
So. Mm-hmm.
And they put a port in you, didn't they?
Yeah, they put a port, or like this little. It was like a little piece of plastic that went underneath my skin, and then into one of my veins, into my neck. And then, and that's where they would plug in with a needle, and they just plug in, and that's how they would, and there was a drip attached to it, and that's how it would go throughout my body. So.
Wow.
And then every time I was there for like 3 or 4 hours, and I would put on like maybe 3 or 4 pounds of like the water weight, or
Mm-hmm.
from the medicine weight. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it sucked, man. They gave me etoposide and cisplatin, so that's what it was called.
Since then, so far, so good?
I think so.
Pretty healthy?
Yeah. I kind of, after, I got anxiety about it. Like, so they told me when I was finished with my therapy that I needed to go see them like every couple of months, and then I needed to see them like every 6 months, and
Mm-hmm.
then every year and stuff. I think I've been back once, and that's because my wife pushed me to do it. She wanted me to go, and I was like, I don't, I'm not sick, I'm fine, Every time I would pass the cancer center in Caldwell, like to go to work and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it made me feel sick. So And I think going to hospitals and stuff, it turns me off. I just feel sick and get real anxious about it.
Get that feeling of anxiety back and that fear a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I could have died. Like, thinking about it now, like, I trained all throughout, when I was having it. Like, when I felt good, I would get on the mats, And now thinking about it, I could have died, I could have gotten a scratch or something. My immune system was really low. I could have died. Like, I could have got sick. Someone could have had a cold and given it to me, or had the flu or something. And with my immune system being down, that could be like a real emergency situation.
Sure.
And I really didn't think about it. I just would, like, if I felt good, I would go roll.
Sure. It was probably therapeutic to a certain mindset to just,
yeah,
like, man, I got to get on the mats.
Right. Yeah, I got to get on the mats. And, like, my whole thinking was like, oh man, if I die tomorrow, I want to, be doing something that I love to do.
Didn't want to be sitting around.
Yeah. Didn't want to be sitting around. So, and it was good for me to try to keep the same type of mindset, It's when, like, you start, like, crawling into a hole, like, saying that you're sick, then you're going to believe that you're sick, But if you have a great attitude and, like, so my whole thing, when I would get up and, like, I'd be bald and, like, hurting and just feeling gross, I'd be crying. I'd be thinking, there's someone else out there, in the world that's having a worse time than me. Then, I should go pick myself up and go do what I need to do, for the rest of the day.
Good attitude to have.
Yeah.
Probably helped make you through, get you through it, right?
Yeah, it was a pretty tough time. It was a lonely time in my life. My wife had to take, had to work a lot, just, so that we could kind of survive, and I wasn't working at the time. And so it was a big bummer, man.
Sure, I literally can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But you made it through. Here you are now, kicking ass, looking good, all that good stuff.
I think so. I'm trying.
I mean, you were at your purple belt then. How long was it? You said you did 4 months of chemo.
Mm-hmm.
How long was it after that before life started getting back to normal, both on the mats and off?
So in 2013, I just kind of tried to, get better, kind of recover. And then 2014, I actually had 2 fights. So it was fun. I fought a couple of times in Wyoming in some, just a little rinky-dink show. So I think, like, the first time I fought, like, a cowboy. He was like a bull rider from Colorado. He was really big. He was tall, tall and skinny, so he could make 145. So,
and what happened?
This was a great experience. I choked him out in the 2nd minute. So he came at me pretty strong, and he kind of weathered the storm. I remember when he got close that I was able to clinch and fire off a couple of knees, and at one point he caught my knee, and I think he tried to block one at first, and I think it ended up breaking his forearm. And then he caught one of my knees, and I did like a Kimura trap to like a Sumigaeshi throw. I ended up on his back and rear naked choke in the first round. So
nice.
So that was a pretty exciting time.
Good exposure for your first AMI MMA fight.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Get in the cage.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
What happened in fight number 2?
Fight number 2, I remember wanting to do a little bit more stand up, so I was training a little bit more boxing and kicking, and like within the first like stands out there, I go to throw a kick and he catches it, and I was just like, whatever, I'll just pull guard, immediately go to high guard, and when I'm at this point, I'm like right next to my cornerman, Scott Tumetz, and he's like, hey, there's a triangle right there, and I'm like, just like, yeah, shaking my head, like, yep. And so I go for that triangle, it's not there, and I just switch it to an arm bar, and I finished with the arm bar, I think a rolling arm lock, in like 36 seconds.
Nice.
So
that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
When did you earn your brown belt?
Brown belt. I got my brown belt in 2016.
Who gave it to you?
Matt Thornton.
Nice.
So
Matt Thornton, founder and head bigwig of
Yes.
SBG.
Mm-hmm. The boss.
The boss man.
The boss.
That was in 2016, you said?
Mm-hmm. 2016. He came down for a seminar, and really wasn't thinking. I think I was thinking about it at the time. Had been training for a while, and I was thinking about it. Like, I must be getting kind of close, but you never want to think about it too much. It's just, so if it comes, it comes. If not, then you don't worry about it. But at that time, I think, it was like excited. I was excited to, level up. So
that was in 2016, and
Mhm.
then in 2017, fall of 2017,
right.
Matt Thornton gives you your black belt.
Yeah.
How was that?
Crazy. That was crazy. That one I wasn't even thinking about. I thought at least I had, a year or two more left as a brown belt. Wanted to compete a little bit more, but
Before your name was called, did you know?
no,
Had no
I
idea.
didn't know. So there's a thing at camp, like when we first started camp, going to camps, or when we first became affiliates of SBG, they used to, they would sometimes do Ironmans.
So when you say camp, what is camp?
Camp is where like all the tribes from SBGs all over the world get together, and we learn a ton of jiu-jitsu, but a lot of it's just like making new relationships with people and meeting other people, and making friends and having a good time.
So just a big powwow of the SBG affiliates.
Yeah, people get to roll and just meet and network.
That's awesome.
That's
So
awesome.
we had one that you go to, and you were saying with the Ironmans.
Yeah, so like sometimes they would Ironman people right after. So then it got to be where like they would only Ironman black belts, and then it got to be no Ironmans after camps, because it's kind of it's a long thing. Like you're doing seminars for a couple of days, and it's a lot of time on the mats, so they stopped doing them for whatever reason, and so I didn't think anybody was going to get called or anything like that, and so they called us up. So
He
I had
gets
to
up
go
and says, "Hey, we got a few new black belts in this
Yeah.
organization. Some people are leveling up, getting their black belts."
Right.
And at this time, we had 8 brown belts.
Mm-hmm.
And was it 8? Yeah, 8 or
Mhm.
7 or 8. And there's plenty of you that could have got it.
Mm-hmm.
So when he starts saying, 3 of you are getting your black belt,
Mm-hmm.
just in that moment, what are you thinking?
Oh man.
Could it be me? Could it not be me?
Yeah.
There's no way it's me. It's definitely me. What are you
Right.
thinking?
At first I was like, man, it'd be cool, but I've got some time left. Like so if it does happen, if it doesn't, I'm great with it either way. And so, but then it was me, and then
So he calls the first one,
Yeah.
Jesse Brock.
Jesse Brock,
Calls the second one, Jake Martinez.
Yeah.
1 left. What are
Yep.
you thinking?
I'm like, oh man. I don't know. Just
Then he calls your name.
yeah. Then
Michael
he calls
Ransom.
me, and I was so emotional at that time. I'm kind of a sensitive person. I'm pretty emotional. I'll own that. But yeah. So I was just freaking out inside. It's just like I did a great thing. A black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu isn't something that's just given to you. You earn that. It's a lot of time on the mats. It's a lot of sacrifice. Sacrificing of your time. If you're married, you sometimes sacrifice, family time. Things like that. So it was something that I definitely felt that I had to have earned. So, and just being okay with it now, if someone like Matt Thornton believes that you deserve a black belt, you have to, you also have to believe in that,
Sure.
I mean, it's gonna be like the to me the black belt, like there's still so much to learn. It's just I don't know. It just an awesome feeling, you know.
Yeah, it's an amazing moment. I was there
Right.
for that. It's pretty incredible. I was lucky to be there. And then a couple weeks later, we did all the black belt Ironmans.
Oh yeah.
That was a ton of fun.
I think it was like there were around 50 people. I think in 2.5 hours. I think is how long it took. And normally we do like either like time to tap, but it was all just to tap on that one.
All to submission.
It was all to submission, so no one got switched over or anything like that. It was just go, go, go.
People giving it to you pretty hard. What was the percentage of people who were like going soft and congratulating you versus the people who were like, I'm here to crush you?
I don't know. I think one time Jesse Brock said when we do our Ironmans, we eat our own. So we tried sometimes. Like I think we joke around about it, but it's not as.
What does that mean?
We're not brutal with them, but you know, not at all. We're not brutal at all, but it's just fun to like give it to your friends sometimes.
Oh,
you
definitely.
know? When they're earning it, you know, it's like it's a good time. It's not like hazing, but it's like
Now you're putting it on them a little bit.
yeah, you're gonna put it on a little
I mean,
bit.
they just earned a belt. Come
or
on.
you know, or pull off a funky move or something like that. You know, it's fun. It's all in fun.
Well, of all the belting traditions there are out there, I mean, there's far more violent and brutal and ridiculous
the
ways.
whipping each other.
The whipping, the choking out. Have you seen that one where like the guy, you get your belt and he chokes you out?
Unconscious.
So stupid. That's nonsense. So now you're a black belt, full-fledged black belt under Matt Thornton. Got a handful of them at SBG. You coach kids.
Yep.
You coach adults. Coach a little bit of everybody, right?
Yeah. I coach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, and some Muay Thai.
A little bit of everything to every age.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
So in Jiu-Jitsu, as you are a black belt, you've obviously made the progression from white to black.
Mm-hmm.
Being on the black belt end of it, when you're looking at the people who are white belts, blue belts, etc., all the way through, give me just a brief rundown, belt by belt, what makes that belt and what you're looking for someone to get to that belt level. So obviously white belt, somebody just walking in the door, beginner.
Right.
What's the progression of blue belt from you as a black belt? What are you looking for? What are your metrics?
So like white belt is kind of like you're learning how to survive. You're learning how to be comfortable on the mats. You know, being okay with getting smashed. You know, being teachable. Like you know, trying to do the things that you're taught. You know, instead of just trying to muscle the things, like listen to your coach, you know. And then I think at blue belt, you know, they have more of an understanding of now I can, you know, not only can I can survive, but now I'm, you know, maybe starting to learn how to pass, you know, just expanding and playing more guards. And then purple belt is, you know, really, you know, pretty sharp. Starts to be a few moves ahead, you know. Knows a lot of jiu-jitsu, so I think the purple belt is like the mark of a teacher in jiu-jitsu. So being able to teach as well, and so you know almost kind of close to what a black belt knows, but you just don't perform it yet. You don't have that the timing and things like that yet. And then and the brown belt, I think like it's like a point where you really tighten everything up, and you're not giving a lot of space. You're not going back and forth between positions. Like if I take mount, I keep mount, and it's mine now. That space is mine. I don't go back to it. And then at black belt, you're submitting a little bit more. You know.
Sure. That's great. That's a great description of each belt. As a coach, when you're watching people roll, whether they be kids, adults, whatever belt level, when you're watching somebody, what are you watching for? Because a lot of people, I feel like, get it in their heads that they're like, well, I got to get the submissions. But as a coach, maybe that's not what you're watching for. You're watching for what? What are you watching when you analyze somebody who's rolling that's maybe getting close to a belt or even a stripe?
Right. Looking at how well they control themselves as well. Not just like how well they're controlling like the match or the other person. You know, I like to see whether they're like they play like cool and calm, and they're actually trying to use jiu-jitsu instead of, you know, muscling things. So I'm a big stickler for technique. You know, and I really like when people don't miss steps. You know, like if I teach a sweep, especially to the kids, you know, that if they miss a step, it's not going to look right, and most of the time it might fail, you know. So I definitely watch to see if they're doing every single step, you know, that I asked them to do. So
Is it easier to train kids or adults?
to me, I think kids, because they're kind of a clean slate. Like you'll tell them to do something and they just try to do it, you know. I think whereas adults sometimes have reservations and things like, you know, like I can't do that because my shoulder doesn't go this way, or you know, or I'm just not that flexible, or you know, kids will just try to do what you say, you know.
I feel like it's also, maybe you can agree or disagree, it's a fear of failure. Like with adults, they'll hit the bags, like
Right.
I obviously coach boxing.
Mhm.
They hit the bags and it looks all clean and great, and then they go spar and they're super tight. They don't throw anything. They move really awkwardly, and they'll say, "Man, why can't I make that transition?" And I always say, "It's your fear. You're just afraid to throw because
Right.
you're afraid of failing."
Right.
You know, when you go in a bag, there's no fear of anything. You're not getting hit. Nobody's really watching you. You know,
Right.
like win or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You feel the same in jiu-jitsu. Maybe kids are a little bit easier because they don't have that just fear that's built in them of failing.
Right. Yeah.
They just kind of go do.
I would
Okay.
agree. I would agree with that. Like, you know, as you get older, I guess, you start to care what people think, you know, about you. I didn't, when I started, I didn't really care. Like I was intent on learning this thing, you know, but but I had done, you know, some martial arts before, so I know what it's like, you know, being around other people and things like that. So I don't know, for some it can be a scary thing, you know.
For sure.
But kids just, man, they don't care. They just want to do it right and, you know, get it and get their kudos, and now they got a cool move they can, you know, roll around with. So
That's awesome. It looks like a lot of fun working with those kids and
mm-hmm.
and stuff. You also spend a lot of time traveling to corner kids and going to competitions.
Yeah.
How is being a coach at competition different with the kids than adults?
How is it different? No real difference. I really don't change my style of coaching. I just go out there and scream at them, you know, just scream at them. I've got this voice that carries through, I guess. But, you know, I try to coach them through things, you know. I'm not just saying, hey, do that arm bar, or hey, do that move, or, you know, I try to walk them through things, you know, when they're in trouble or things like that, or just be encouraging, you know.
Yeah, it's oftentimes that's just the best thing. That's
Right,
just
yeah,
what they need to hear.
Just be encouraging,
You're doing
you know,
great.
tell them that they're going to do great, and, you know, just be there for them, you know.
Sure.
Let them know that all those nerves, you know, that's a normal thing. You know, that's just your body getting prepared to throw down.
You coach Muay Thai, you coach boxing, you coach jiu-jitsu, you coach a little bit of everything. You corner MMA fights.
Yes.
Is it harder to teach jiu-jitsu than it is the other arts?
I think so. I think so. There's, you know, everything evolves, so you really gotta keep up. Like a you know, a jab is always gonna be a jab. Like there's never gonna be like a new or a better way to throw it. You know, it just goes straight out
Totally
and
agree.
straight back. It comes right back to your chin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, with jiu-jitsu, it's evolving. You know, like I was thinking the other day, maybe I need to play around with, you know, more, you know, more guards and more sweeps or different things, and And I was like, well, maybe I don't want to like necessarily add that to my game, like want to do it, but like learn it so that I can either defend against it, like if it happens, in a roll or in a competition or something like that. Like it's, so you really have to learn a lot of things, even though that may not, play into your game. Like you gotta learn some.
You gotta be
some
aware
things.
of
Yeah.
it. Gotta know about it.
Yeah. So.
How has coaching helped your jiu-jitsu?
So like it's helped me. You have to do things, step by step, and you gotta know, why you're doing something, and so every time I go to teach, I'm just kind of reinforcing the things that I already know, and teaching myself why I do this. Well, if I put my hand here, I'm really, I can really turn their chin and really cross face them, so knowing the why all the time, or trying to figure out the why, really helps me remember, when I roll, what I'm doing and why I'm doing it,
Perfect. Yeah, huge advantage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's oftentimes compared to speaking a language, doing jiu-jitsu, it's very complex. It's hard to translate, but when you learn to coach it, you learn to speak it, I think, which I can imagine only aids you as a competitor yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier you said making the transition to SBG has just been the best thing in the world. How did you get hooked up with these guys, and what's so great about it?
So after we kind of had a falling out with Alliance, and I had seen a couple of us competed in the blue belt division against some of Travis Davis's guys. Travis Davison is the vice president. Excuse me, I said Travis Davis. It's Travis Davison. Forgive me, Travis. We had seen one of his guys, Dakota Tackett, was in our division, and I think he won, and we just saw how tough he was, and that was pretty cool. And I had a couple of my kids went up against some of Travis's kids, and I just saw how cool they were, saw how tough they were, and they were kind of cool to talk to. And actually, when I had testicular cancer, like I went to coach one of my kids, Hans, in a tournament at the UFC Expo, and I had seen Travis like out late at night, like at this Irish pub, and like I said, hey, how's it going? Do you remember me? From the Northwest Submission Challenge. He was like, hey, yeah, you want to dance? And I was like, no. So it just kind of, he left a really good impression in my mind. Like, he was just a real cool dude. So really kind of a laid back dude. And so we were looking for an affiliation, and it was like we were kind of throwing around some cool jiu-jitsu places, but we knew that SBG wasn't just like jiu-jitsu. It was more about fighting, and that was more what our gym was about. Jiu-jitsu is for fighting, but we're universal in that, we can do MMA, we can do sport jiu-jitsu. If your goal is to just defend yourself, like, you're gonna get all of that at Straight Blast Gym. If you become a member of Straight Blast Gym, you will learn how to defend yourself. You can compete if you want to compete, in almost any, realm of combat sports. So,
meeting up with those guys,
seemed
like a good fit.
Yeah, it was a great fit. So it was just, and it seemed, like things that we were already doing. We just fit right in. And the way that they treated us, like they saw a lot of value in us, like right away. So I get, the big thing that I really like is the aliveness, the timing, the energy, motion, that, it's just not drilling to get good. It's, active resistance. Like you gotta know, you can't just, just pretend you're doing something or just go through the motions. You've got to have like someone actively resisting you, and
For sure.
that's how you learn.
Yeah, it's not going to translate to real life at all.
Right.
Otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So you compete in jiu-jitsu, you coach jiu-jitsu, you're black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I find interesting when I talk to people who do jiu-jitsu versus people who do MMA is everybody who does MMA is a fan of MMA. They watch it, they have their favorite fighters, they geek out on UFCs and ONE FC and all that stuff. Jiu-jitsu is interesting because a lot of people who do jiu-jitsu, even black belts, aren't necessarily spectator fans of jiu-jitsu. Are you?
There's a few people that I watch.
Like who? Who do you
Well, like if I'm gonna get on YouTube and I'm gonna watch like highlights or something, I'll watch like I like Kron Gracie. I like his style.
His match with Gary Tonin is
Yeah,
one of the
wasn't that a
best.
great match? I like his style. Like he doesn't play like the funky stuff. He does a lot of the just a lot of great fundamentals and stuff, taking up space and
He's like a smaller Hodger.
yeah. Mhm. And then but then there are some guys that I like to watch, like the Mendes brothers. Of course, they're super cool. I like the way they move, and Gordon Ryan. I like watching Gordon Ryan. Of course, he's top dog.
Mm-hmm. I spent all day watching Pans yesterday, and I watched all of his matches. It was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
I'm geeked out. It was like freaking 6 hours long or something.
Mhm.
But yeah, he's an animal, that's for sure. How do you think he's gonna do in the gi?
I don't think he's gonna do as great as he thinks he's gonna do. Like I don't think he's just gonna fuck people up like he says. I think he's gonna have to work for it. But I think he'll do all right. He'll do great. But
Sure. It's very different. that's for sure. And he's
right,
got,
it's just it's a different game, and I mean it's not like he's never done it before. I think as he was coming up, he wore the gi, so it's not gonna be like a huge transition for him. But I just think like some people just are get ahead. They get ahead of the game. Like there are black belts and there are black belts. Like I know some guys that are really awesome at jiu-jitsu, and they could beat me like with one hand behind their back, but then when they go to tournaments, there's just always someone out there that's just bigger and better. And
that's the interesting thing about black belt jiu-jitsu versus the other belts is any of the other belts in competition, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt,
right,
you're always going to compete with someone. If you're a blue belt, I'm a blue belt. We've both been training within the relative same amount of time, even if you're the higher end of blue versus a higher end or lower end of blue.
Right.
In black belt, you can have somebody who's been a black belt for 10 minutes. You can have somebody who's been a black belt for 30 years.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's a far wider. They've been through jiu-jitsu 3 more times than you have.
Right.
And so the chances of going up against somebody who's just light years ahead of you is a lot higher in the black belt division.
Good.
I think people don't consider that because black belt, not all, like you were saying, there's wild varying degrees in the black belt groups. So you can go against someone who's just been doing it longer than you've been alive or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's weird just how you could just be training like so hard and then in a minute get stomped or something. Just it's amazing. It's all just time on the mats. The more time that you spend on the mats, the better your timing's gonna get, and you're gonna know how people move. You're gonna have a better sense of feeling and things like that. And competition can really do that. Like they say that competition can make you, it's. I've heard someone say it's like taking 6 months worth of lessons. That it's just so great for you, and it is because, I mean, you're doing jiu-jitsu in a live situation where there's no letting you do anything. Like they're resisting all the way through. So there you're gonna it all becomes a game of feel and knowing when to do, knowing when to move and knowing when to be explosive and knowing when to settle. It's all just time on the mats.
Well, and you're working with people who, you've never rolled with before, and the real eye-opening thing for me is you get sort of comfortable working with the people that you're working with. Sure, you're rolling, you're trying to take each other's head off, but
Right.
like you start to learn what game people have,
Right.
and so you kind of learn to anticipate. Even people who are higher ranked than you can start to anticipate. Whereas in competition, there's no anticipation. I literally have no idea what this person is doing, and maybe the thing that I'm worst at is the thing that they're the best at.
Right.
And huge lessons in competition. How important is it for people to compete in jiu-jitsu to progress through the ranks?
I don't say that you have to compete, in order to progress, but I think that, it's going to be helpful for you,
So maybe it's a tool, but not a necessity.
Yeah, it's a tool, not a necessity.
What about rolling? How important is rolling?
Yeah, yes.
Got to roll.
You have to roll, like I said. You have to, practice jiu-jitsu where people are actively trying to stop you. Like how else,
You're not going to know otherwise.
Yeah, you're not going to know it. You're not going to know the timing. You're not going to know when to go, when those cues to go are, or when to attack or things like that. You have to roll.
For sure. Get out there. Get on the mats.
As much as you can, at least, or if you can't full on roll, positional roll.
Sure.
I think live sparring is important.
I'm always glad to hear people like you say that, because I'm an open mat junkie. So. That's always good to hear.
Yeah, compete every once in a while. You don't have to compete all the time, but just so that you get that real life situation. If you have to defend yourself in real life, I think that's the closest thing you're gonna feel. All those nerves, just like
totally.
Oh my God, I'm going now. Like I'm doing this. I'm fighting. Like you you can't really get that in training. You can't really get that at the gym. That sense, where your body feels that fight or flight feeling. You can't get that at the gym. So it's best to feel that once or twice in your life, just in case.
Sure.
There's a day where you have to defend yourself.
That is super important. I couldn't agree more. It's just like boxing. People come into class and do all the drills in the world, but without getting out and sparring once in a while. I got to tell you, getting punched in the face is an experience in itself, even if it's just once. The first time you get just clocked, it's wildly different than I think anybody thinks it is. Not that it's super violent or jarring, but it's just your body reacts very differently than you would anticipate because you watch movies, and you grew up on that media violence. So I always tell people, even if you spar, at least do it once, because you've got to understand how your body responds when you are attacked by someone.
Yeah, exactly. And you figure out your body can really take a lot. Like, when your adrenaline's going, you think, oh man, if I get punched with those, like, I would die. Like, no, it's going to take a few before, depending on, who's throwing the punches,
Sure.
If it's just an average person, it's going to take more than, unless, they know how to punch. Or,
Sure.
It's going to take a few times. You're going to get hit a few times, but you can fight back through that.
Yeah, and you learn, like you said, how much you can kind of take. Same thing with jiu-jitsu, I would say, is like, when you're a white belt, somebody has a half-ass choke on you and you're tapping and thinking you're dying. You roll for a few years, somebody gets a choke super deep, and you're like, I'm good.
Right.
You just learn the difference, that's safety or not.
Well, another great thing, though, that I think about competition is what it can do for you mentally. Like it can make you mentally tough, too. Like being out there, you have to fight these nerves and you start like second guessing yourself. But like a lot of times though, if you go out and you believe like you're a monster or you're gonna smash people that day, and you just kind of like say that over and over, it's like there's a mental side of martial arts too. It's not just physical. Like you could be a total great a great athlete, you could be in great physical shape, but if you can't think through things, or if you're not mentally tough, and you freeze up, I think competition can help you kind of not narrow it down, but like, what's the word? Dial it in.
Sure.
You can dial in that mental part and the physical part. Like where do I need to be? Like what was it? Why was I thinking about all these things?
Do you have any like competition routines or anything? Stuff you tell yourself, stuff you do, any rituals?
Yeah, I like to pace back and forth and like slap my chest and like feel like a savage, like even though I don't look like it. If you saw me walking downtown, like I get this all the time, like, oh man, like you don't look like much, but then oh, but I saw you compete that one time and you were like pacing back and forth and like slapping your chest and like
I would say that's almost a benefit.
Yeah.
Because people have an
Right.
expectation of you. Like if they look at you and they're like, oh, that guy's dangerous, then they're
Right.
gonna approach it differently than if they're like, psst, this guy ain't shit. And then
Right.
suddenly
yeah,
you're
and
just
then,
an animal.
And then they open the box and then this fucking explosion of kick ass comes out.
I would rather people assume
Right.
that you're not that dangerous and you are, than people
Right.
think you're a badass and then you suck.
Right. Yeah. So, but that's important. So, like, I pace back and forth. I'll slap my chest and just try to get into a different zone.
Mhm.
To me, like in any combat sport, like I feel like you have to. It's kill or be killed.
Mhm.
Like when you go out there,
Mhm.
like I don't want to go out there to win. I don't want to go out there to score points. Like I feel like this is combat. Like whatever form it's gonna be, like only one person should come out of this alive. That's how I feel. And then maybe along the way, you end up scoring points. So you end up getting that submission when you're doing the right things. When you're
Mhm.
going for the kill. I think that's important too.
Is that maybe how you earned the moniker of Tournament Ransom?
A little bit. I think like the first time. So I think the first time the guys at Combat Fitness ever saw me compete was at Northwest Submission Challenge, and I wasn't. They'd never seen me compete. We just rolling, and I'm like super nice when I roll. I was a blue belt at the time, and all of a sudden, like it's our turn to go up. And I'm just pacing back and forth, and I'm looking at some of these guys in my, in my division, and I'm just pacing back and forth, like trying to look as mean as I can, slapping myself, and I see I'll look in their eyes, and I can see like, oh, like yeah, I think this guy means business, and like the first guy I went up against, we were going for a takedown, having a little takedown battle, like kind of using judo grips, and I jumped guard. At that time, you could jump guard as a blue belt, and as I was falling down, as I was falling back, I threw on a pretty slick arm bar, and I popped the dude's arm, and so I got up, and I wasn't very nice. Like I didn't like go up and like try
I'm
to
so
shake his
sorry.
hand or pick him up. It was just like, wow, Mike just did that. He just popped a dude's arm like in a minute, So
Boom.
it was like boom.
What's up now?
They were like, whoa, like where did this guy come from? So then they would call me Tournament Ransom. So sometimes when I'm sparring, if they see me spar, they'll call me K1 Ransom, because sometimes I'll do some fancy kicks, They call me K1 Ransom.
Speaking of K1, what was that crap we were watching the other day with like the headbutts and stuff?
Oh, that's
What was that?
less way. So that is Burmese boxing. So I just found this. Like I thought that like modern MMA was kind of brutal, but like Lethway is like, it's like Thai boxing, elbows, knees. punches and kicks, but you can headbutt, and there is no scoring system. So like if you're both standing at the end of like I think it's like 5 rounds, it's a draw. And then if you get knocked out before the 4th round, you can call, or before the 5th round, you can call a timeout, and they can revive you so that you can go back into the fight.
So it's not over.
It's not over.
Your corner can just come in and be like, all right, buddy, come on.
Smelling salts.
Let's get back in there.
Yes.
Whoa.
And I believe it's like they give you 2 minutes to get revived. And it's pretty stellar. Every fight that I've seen, like everyone's just like broken afterwards, like cut
sure.
or like.
The headbutts on their own are just brutal, man.
Oh yeah.
So when are you making your left weight debut?
Never. I don't know.
When can we expect this from Michael?
That would be awesome.
Lethway Ransom.
No, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah, forget K1 Ransom. We're just gonna call you Lethway Ransom.
I wish.
Spar.
I'm gonna start headbutting the bags. So if you see, I'm training my headbutts. I'm not just doing it because.
You're on the speed bag over there.
That's awesome. So you've done 4 fights, kickboxing, couple fights, MMA, plenty. I mean, countless matches in point karate, tons of matches in jiu-jitsu. Your ripe young age of 34 years old, right?
I'll be 36 in October.
36, jeez.
Yep.
What's next, man?
Well, I don't know. I'll just keep coaching.
You gonna keep competing?
I need to compete. I haven't competed as a black belt yet. I've been kind of shy about it, but hopefully soon. Hopefully soon I'll grow a pair and get out there, get on the mats and go for it again.
You only need to grow one.
Yeah, I only need to grow one.
You only need to grow one.
Hey, with technology these days.
Not saying it's impossible.
Have you ever seen where they like grow it on your own body? Well, right. I think I saw a picture the other day where a guy was growing like a nose on
like
his
an ear or
forehead.
something.
Yeah, like he was growing a nose on. Imagine if I grew a testicle like somewhere like on my neck. They're like, what is that?
Just hanging from your chin.
It's a goiter.
It's a goiter. It's
They're gonna transplant soon.
It's a deep birth defect. Why is he always wearing turtlenecks?
What about you gonna compete in anything else? I'm still gonna get you a boxing match.
No, I would love to do a boxing match. I love how technical boxing can be. I like the ranges of fighting there. I think fighting in close. I like that kind of style, like when you get close and throwing lots of body shots and
inside
stuff.
Fighting.
Inside fighting, I really like that. Yeah, so.
Body shots, uppercuts, hooks.
Yes, I love to throw those.
Makes me happy.
Yes, so I really feel like my boxing's starting to get a little bit better. I was telling one of the other coaches the other day how I actually slipped 2 punches in a row. So I felt really good about it. You know, I didn't just put my hands up and block them. I like slipped them. So I felt really good about that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Coming along nicely.
Heck yeah.
I gotta get you out in the ring soon, man.
I mean, that's, you know, like when that's hard to do when punches are coming at you, you know, and you moving your head and you just make them miss. Like, you gotta have some good timing, man. So it was.
Dude, darn right. It's all about the timing. Well, we know a lot about you inside of the gym. What's something people maybe would be surprised to know about you outside of the gym?
Man, there's not a whole lot to me. Like the gym.
You have a collection of cartoon tattoos.
Yeah, I have a collection of cartoon tattoos on my arm. I got like Totoro on there. I got Hello Kitty on there. I got my own kind of Garbage Pail Kids. It's in the shape of a Garbage Pail sticker, but it says Jiu-Jitsu Kids, and then it says Mike the Mangler on it.
Mike the Mangler.
And then it's like a little guy that looks like Jason Voorhees holding an arm. So that's like me, I guess.
Or taking somebody's arm home.
Yeah, I've broken. I popped 2 arms in a competition. I've put 2 dudes to sleep.
Beautiful.
In a competition, yeah.
Do you have
with
submission
baseball
of
bat
choice?
chokes. submission of choice.
Like just your
I really
favorite?
I like the baseball bat choke. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I mean it was pretty cool to put someone to sleep with that. Like, and because like the whole time when you're doing it, like you're giving it. It's not my favorite because it's like a big sacrifice if you don't land it. But when you get it, it's pretty sweet because they could be passing, and so they get pass points if you're competing. Or like I know one time a guy passed, he got passing points, and then he mounted on top. But then I felt him go over, like I felt him just kind of slump, and then like I just rolled him over, and then like stood up and walked away. It was like
just out.
It was like one of those movies where the action hero like blows shit up and then walks away.
Just walks away.
And yeah, it was like that. It's like, yeah, I just did that and I walked away, and then I have these crazy eyes afterwards, and people are like, "Oh, what did you just do?" I was like, I don't know.
You have any other submissions you hunt or your favorites? Or just whatever's there?
No, just kind of whatever's there. Yeah. But I am and I like the regular cross collar choke. It's like one of the most basic moves, and I haven't given up on it. Like if I can put one hand inside and then get your other collar or get the other material on the outside of your shoulder,
Done.
I'm gonna go for it. Yeah.
Done.
So I like it. So collar chokes, I really like collar chokes. So.
That's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Well, appreciate you coming in, Mike. Had a good chat, learned a lot about you. How do people keep up with you and what you're doing outside of this?
You just find me at the gym at SBG Idaho, Combat Fitness.
Any social media?
Oh, Handsom Ransom 82. You can follow me. I don't really care.
Tournament Ransom.
I don't really
Mike the
care about
Mangler.
it.
Handsome Ransom.
Yeah.
You're a man of many monikers.
Yeah, I should keep up with social media, but I'm mostly just creep. So
come on, everybody does.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, appreciate you coming in, Mike.
Thank you.
Any parting shots, Tim?
Not at all. That was an awesome conversation. I just like listening and learning all about everything. So
yeah, we're gonna get Tim out on the mats here at some point.
Nice.
Yeah, someday.
Ooh.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming in, Mike.
Thank you.
I think we're gonna head to the gym and go roll, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Bye-bye.
Let's go do it.
See ya.